Hello, and welcome to the Sheet Field Types webinar. In this video, we'll go over the different sheet field types and their uses. To begin, we're going to start with a new sheet by going to Setup, Sheets, and clicking on New. Now, it's very important that you select the correct sheet type the very first time, because the different sheet fields that are available are based off of the sheet type that you select. If you select the wrong sheet type from the beginning, you cannot change and go back and get the other one later. We're just going to start with a basic patient letter here. We're going to select the patient letter type. That way our fields that we're going to select are going to be based off of this sheet type. We'll just keep everything at defaults and hit OK. To start, we're going to go off of what are sheet field types. Those are simply these buttons in the upper right corner. Output text, static text, input field, line, checkbox, rectangle, static image, signature, combo box, patient image. There are a couple others that we're going to go over that they're not being shown right now because they're not available in this sheet type. But to begin, we're going to go over the output text. So we're going to go ahead and select this. And you're going to see that you have field names that are going to pull information from OpenDental. The main purpose of an output text is to actually pull information from the database and put it into the sheet. The type of information that can be pulled, again, differs depending on the different type of sheet that you select. So for the patient letter, we're given practice title, practice address, practice state zip, first name, last name, all of these. In another sheet type, you might find just patient first name, last name, and today's date. In some sheet types, for example, patient forms and medical history forms, there is not a single field name that is available in output text. The reason being, output text is only pulling information from the database. With a patient form type and a medical history form type, you can actually put those forms online, and there is no safe way of being able to access your OpenDental database through the one URL that goes online. So there is no reason to have an output text for those. Now we're going to take a look at the consent type. That way we can take a look and see the differences with the output text from the consent sheet type and the patient letter, because there is one big difference. So we'll take the extraction consent, we'll copy it over, and we'll double click in. Now if we look at the output text, we see we don't have as many field names, but we have this new thing called mobile caption. This is what will show for a patient that is using a cell phone or a tablet. This is also what you would see when you're using a tablet on eClipboard. If we take a look at this up here, this patient name first last, this is actually the output text field. And we already have the mobile caption full name. So what that means is, on the mobile layout, the patient's going to see the date readout, and we're going to see full name on the left side. On the right side, it's actually going to have whatever the patient's name is, pulling from the database. The mobile caption is only shown on the consent type because the consent is the only sheet type that does not go online, but can still use the mobile layout. And the mobile layout is important, like I said, for eClipboard use. The next sheet field type that we're going to cover is the static text. So we'll go ahead and reopen that extraction consent, and we'll see the static text is going to be up here in the upper right corner. This is where you type the stuff that goes into this sheet. This is what the patients are going to read. You want to make sure that when you create these fields that you don't overlap anything. So it's very common to have a static text that's very long. So for example, this extraction consent, we have this information right here. Let's say that we are asking a question where the patient needs to check for agree. We do not want to add anything in the middle of this static text because one or both of the fields will not show properly. So it's very important to make sure that the fields are separate and they do not overlap. So let's go ahead and talk about the next sheet field type, and that's the static text. If we double click in the upper right corner, we have static text. These are the words on the page that the patient is going to read. So static text is simply meant for textual context. There's not going to be any interaction with the static text. So you type in what you want and you'd use it that way. One of the nice things about static text is that it's very versatile. You can type what you want in, or depending on the sheet type that you've selected, you can also use these insert fields. These are going to operate the same way that an output text would. This is going to pull information from the patient's chart and put it on the sheet. However, remember again that these fields do not work online, so they will not work properly in a patient form or a medical form if they're being used online, because again, online cannot access the database. But if you're using these in Office, you can use any one of these fields to pull information from the chart and show it on the sheet, same as you would any text that you type. It's also very important that once you've created your fields, specifically with static text, that you don't add anything above it or below it. So for example, we have all of this writing here. Let's say we were to have some checkbox that says, I agree for the consent. You do not want to put that inside the parameters of this box. Any field that overlaps another, so say for example I take this tooth number and I put it inside that field, it means that one or both of the fields will not work properly. In this particular case, the tooth number will not show and will not allow for our patients to actually input properly. So even if I were to put something in here where it looks aesthetically pleasing, it's not going to operate properly. So it's very important to make sure all of your fields are separated. Last thing I want to show you with the static text is the include in mobile. So just like with the output text, you have the ability to have this information show on the mobile layout. To do so, you need to select include in mobile in the lower left corner. And once you have that check marked, it'll actually add that over here on the mobile layout. If you do not have it checked, it disappears from the mobile layout. It's very important that if you have information that you want the patient to read on the mobile layout, that it is included in the static text or an output text or an input field. Some way it should show on both the left and right sides. Next, we're going to talk about input fields. And with input fields, it's going to be a little different with some of the abilities that they can do. So we're going to actually open up the patient registration template first, registration form, copy it over, and we'll open that up. So in the upper right corner, we have input field. This is the stuff that the patient actually types in response to whatever's on the sheet. Now with the input fields, you have the ability to import information from the sheet to the Open Dental database. That would be these fields right here. So all of these fields are available for the patient to type in, and then you can import that into their chart. If you want to do address, city, state, zip, those are all available. First name, last name, home phone in case of emergency, and your insurance information. These are all based off of the patient registration form. If you have something that is not going to be importable, say for example the question doesn't exist in Open Dental, like who is your primary physician, you can use this miscellaneous. And just like with the output text, you do have a mobile caption. You want to put the name of this one as well. If the question is going to be, who is your primary physician? Who is your primary physician? This is what's going to show on the left side for the mobile layout. If we were to select a different field, so for example, first name, same thing. We put what we want it to be, first name, and that's going to show. So that's what the input fields are used for. I am going to show you now on a medical form what the differences are going to be. So we select medical history update, copy that over, we'll hit OK for now, and double click in. We look at the input fields, we see different options for importing into the Open Dental database. With medical forms, you're going to have medications, and in case of emergency, those are going to be the most important things. We do still have birth date, first name, last name, because those are required for using online. And again, the patient form and the medical history forms can be used online as long as you have the input field, first name, last name, and birth date. And now we're going to look at something that accompanies the input field, and that's the line. That's this sheet field type right here. The line is literally that. It's going to be a line, vertical, horizontal, or potentially even diagonal, that you'll place as an aesthetic value or some sort of visual cue for a patient to do something. Most commonly, these are used in conjunction with the input field or the signature to indicate that's where the patient's supposed to type or sign. So for example, we see all of these input fields here. If we were to move this, we see there's actually a line already hidden underneath. The whole point is that when you view this, you're going to see that there's a line for you to type or to write. So let's go ahead and close this. The next thing we're going to go over is the checkbox. The checkbox is used for patient input with predetermined selections. So essentially it's the same thing as the input field, except instead of the patient typing what they want, you actually are giving them selections to choose from. Just like the input field, you're going to have different selections available based off the sheet type that you select. So let's go back into that medical history form and look at the checkboxes in the upper right corner. We see that we are given the allergies, medical problems, miscellaneous field, so if it doesn't important to open dental, you can put it in here, or check med boxes. Check med boxes are essentially saying no to currently having a specific medication. But you'll find these fields differ from the registration form when we look at the check boxes, where we have things like gender, insurance relationship, marital position, student status, etc. So it's very important to make sure, again, first time when you're creating the sheet, that you select the correct sheet type. Otherwise, you will not have the fields available that you want to use for input fields or checkboxes. Now with the checkboxes, just like with the input field and anything else, you want to make sure that it does have the correct things set up for the mobile layout. Let's go ahead and just double click into this gender here. We'll see that we have a mobile group caption. This is the same thing as the mobile caption. This is what's going to be the question that we're asking, in this case, gender. And then the item caption, whether it be mobile item caption or item caption override, that's going to be the response. So in this case, it's going to be male. If we look over in the mobile layout, we have the question on the left side, the response on the right side. And to go with the checkbox, we have our next sheet field type, and that's going to be the rectangle. Just like the line, this is going to be a visual cue for a patient to know where they're supposed to do something. Or it can also be used for aesthetic purposes. So for example, in this sheet, we have this outline right here as a border is a rectangle. But we also have for our checkboxes a rectangle. If we do not have that rectangle around the checkboxes, the patient's not going to know where they're supposed to make an X or click. Especially if you're printing out, there's absolutely no indication of any place to do anything. So that's why it's very important to make sure you have a corresponding rectangle for a checkbox, corresponding line for an input field. So those are the basic sheet field types that you'll use in most sheets. There are a few others that you want to make sure that are available for you, and we're going to go over those right now. The first is going to be the static image. The static image is essentially the picture that you want to add to your sheet. Usually this is going to be a logo, but sometimes it could be different things that you want as a background for aesthetic purposes, or you can even use it for having pictures of different options. For this, it's just a matter of clicking on the static image. If you've already used the image before, you'll find it in this file name dropdown. If you've never used it before, you'll need to import it into the Open Dental database first, in which case click on Import, navigate to your file, and open that. And you see now that we've imported it into the database, it does exist to use for future sheets as well. Then once you place it where you want with the different sizes, different positions, you'll add that and you'll have an image on your sheet. That's the static image. The next thing is going to be the signature. Signature, you just click on and you're going to see you have a name and a mobile caption. This is, again, just like with the input field or anything else, this is what it's going to say on the mobile layout. So it can be something as simple as signature. Put it in place, and you're mostly done. You do need to have that visual indication so patient knows where they're supposed to sign. And it's also a good idea to have a static text to actually say signature or sign here or whatever you want so the patient knows that's what they're supposed to be doing in this section. But that is how you create a signature. The next sheet field type that we're going to go over is actually very unique. It's the Sig Practice, and it's only shown on certain things. To get the Sig Practice, we need to open up a treatment plan. So if we go ahead and copy this over, open it up. So we see we have the Sig Practice up here. We're going to click on it, and it looks exactly like a signature setup without the mobile caption. That's because this is a signature box, but it's unique to only being used for the treatment plan. What it's used for is when a patient comes in and they're offered the treatment plan, they sign for their name, and then the presenter signs in the Sig Practice box. The Sig Practice signature box is actually recorded, and you can use it for the report for your presentations for treatment plans. Other than that, it's not used for anything else. But if you're looking to view one of the existing reports and see your presentations of treatment plans, you need to make sure you have a Sig Practice signature and that your presenter is signing in that signature box. The next sheet field type we're going to go over is the combo box. The combo box is essentially your general drop-down box. This is what you're used to seeing in just about anything. To set it up, you want to make sure that it's information that you would use as a miscellaneous field. What I mean by that is if you had a checkbox and you were going to use it for gender, checkboxes will import information. Combo boxes will not. If you're going to use a checkbox with miscellaneous where it wouldn't import any information, then that would be okay to use a combo box instead. But if you plan on importing the information, it's one of these values, I do not recommend using a combo box. But a combo box is very easy to create. Just hit the button, mobile caption, that's going to be what's going to show as the question. So simple question, how are you today? And we're going to give the options fine and not fine. Then we put the combo box wherever we want. This will operate as a drop-down that'll give us the options of fine and not fine. For the next sheet field type, we're going to go back to the patient letter, and we're going to look at the patient image. Patient images are really only used for things like patient letters, where you're going to show a before and after image from the patient's files. For this, you come in, image category. What this is referring to is that it'll only work if you have one of your image categories set in the imaging module to show for sheets. And once you do have that, you'll be able to select, hit OK. Whatever the first image is showing in that folder will show for here. And it'll only show one image per folder. So if you want to show a before and after, you need to have two folders, a before folder and an after folder in your imaging module that will have the patient's before picture in one and the patient's after picture in the other. For more information on this, we do have a webinar that you can watch that will show you more details of how this works. For the next sheet field type, we're going to go back into the treatment plan and we're going to look at a grid. Now grids are kind of unique. You're only going to see them in certain sheet types that have information that's coming from Open Dental that cannot be edited. So in the case of the treatment plan, we have all of our treatment information. It's going to have the procedure name, cost, pretty much the information that you find in your treatment plan module is going to show here. Now grids are not editable. You can just select the type that's available and place it. There's nothing else that can be done with a grid. But they have great information based off of the sheet type. You'll find in statements, treatment plans, referrals, chart layouts, and printed payment plans, you'll be able to use these grids. And finally, the last thing we're going to go in is special. For the special, we're also going to look at the treatment plan. Specials are going to be things that are unique to a specific sheet type, but don't fall under any other category. So this special, we're going to see the tooth chart, and the tooth chart legend. So essentially what we're looking at is this right here or this right here that tells us what each thing means. There are a couple other specials. You'll find the insurance information in the patient dashboard. In the chart layout sheet, you'll find fields that are specific to just that layout setup as well. Lastly, there's a sheet field type that I want to talk about briefly. If you have EHR set up, and if you have public health screening being used, you may potentially see a sheet field type called screen chart. That would be up here. It's not normally used in really anything that you're going to come across. It's very, very, very specific to one thing only that not many offices use anymore. So if you are curious about this, you can look up the screen chart in the Open Dental manual, but it's not going to be something you're going to be using. So this covers the sheet field types webinar for Open Dental. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call and let our technicians help you out.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. If you have additional questions, please call our support line at 503-363-5432 or access our complete online manual at opendental.com. And to make sure you're staying up to date on our latest training videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications.